Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanasrama Jamuna Tira Vanasrama Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanasrama Jamuna Tira Vanasrama Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaura Pimanandi, Jayam Vishupad Paramahamsa, Pri Rajagacharya Stotra Satya Sri Simad His Divine Grace, Shilabhai Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki, Nanta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, ISKCON BBT Founder Charya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki, Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki, Samavata Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Harinam Sankirtana Ki, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Jainitai Gaura Pimanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksuranmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Sya. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansakalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraya. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, let us offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara, Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayanam Maha. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Mukam karoti vasalam pangom langayate girim. Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. We are reading from the second canto, second chapter, entitled The Lord in the Heart. And today is the last verse of this chapter, which is text number 37. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmanaha satam katamritam sravana puteshu sambritam punanti te vishaya vidhusitashayam vrajanti tach charana saroruhantikam pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam katamritam sravana puteshu sambritam punanti te vishaya vidushitashayam Prajanti tatcharana saroruhantikam. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam. Katham ritam sravana puteshu sambritam. Punanti te vishaya vidushita shayam. Prajanti tatcharana saroruhantikam. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam. Katham ritam sravana puteshu sambritam. Punanti te vishaya vidushita shayam. Vrajanti tatcharana saroruhantikam. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam. Katham ritam sravana puteshu sambritam. Punanti te vishaya vidushita shayam. Vrajanti tasharana saroruhantikam. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam. Katham ritam sravana puteshu sabritam. Punanti te vishaya vidushita shayam. Rajanti tatsarana saroruhantikam. Pibanti, who drink, yea, those, Bhagavataha, of the personality of Godhead, Atmanaha, of the most dear, Satam, of devotees, Katha Amritam, the nectar of the message, Sravana Puteshu, within the ear holes, Sambritam, fully filled, Punanti, purify, Te, there, Vishaya, material enjoyment, Vidusita Ashayam, polluted aim of life, Vrajanti, do go back, Tat, the Lord's, Sarana, feet, Sarodaka Antikam, near the lotus. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarine message of the Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Kind of repeat after me. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarine message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees. Purify the polluted air of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Purport. The sufferings of human society are due to a polluted aim of life, namely, lording it over the material resources. The more human society engages in the exploitation of undeveloped material resources for sense gratification, the more it will be entrapped by the illusory material energy of the Lord, and thus the distress of the world will be intensified instead of diminished. The human necessities of life are fully supplied by the Lord in the shape of food grains, milk, fruit, wood, stone, sugar, silk, jewels, cotton, salt, water, vegetables, etc., in sufficient quantity to feed and care for the human race of the world, as well as the living beings on each and every planet within the universe. Nowadays people have been saying for a long time that there is a food crisis. Prabhupada is telling there is no food crisis. There is a crisis in management of food. The earth can produce 10 times more. The earth can produce 10 times the population of the world if things are properly managed. To continue the purport, the supply source is complete, and only a little energy by the human being is required to get his necessities into the proper channel. There is no need of machines. We continue with the machine topic. Prabhupada started talking about machines in the previous purport, previous verse. There is no need of machines and tools or huge steel plants for artificially creating comforts of life, so-called comforts of life. Now we live on the 24th floor. Somebody lives on the 24th floor thinking, oh, very nice high-rise apartment. Then so-called comfort of life, but then one day no electricity. Cannot go up to your 24th floor by walking. Water is not coming up. Cannot live in that comfortable. So it is artificial. Life is never made comfortable by artificial means, but How is life made? Here it says, life is never made comfortable by artificial needs, but it is made comfortable by God-given, by plain living and high thinking. By plain living and high thinking. And just reading the purport here. Life is never made comfortable by artificial needs, but by plain living and high thinking. The highest perfectional thinking for human society is suggested here by Shukadeva Goswami, namely, sufficiently hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the highest perfectional thinking for human society. Hearing sufficiently Srimad Bhagavatam. For men in this age of Kali, when they have lost the perfect vision of life, this Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchlight by which to see the real path. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada has commented on the Katamritam mentioned in this verse and has indicated Srimad Bhagavatam to be the nectarian message of the personality of Godhead. By sufficient hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, the polluted aim of life, namely lording it over matter, will subside, and the people in general in all parts of the world will be able to live a peaceful life of knowledge and bliss, even on this earth. For a pure devotee of the Lord, any topics in relation with his name, fame, quality, entourage, etc., are all pleasing. And because such topics have been approved by great devotees like Narada, Hanuman, Nanda Maharaj, and other inhabitants of Vrindavan, certainly such messages are transcendental and pleasing to the heart and soul. And by the constant hearing of the message of the Bhagavad Gita, and later the Srimad Bhagavatam, one is assured herein by Srila Shukadeva Goswami that he will reach the personality of Godhead and render him transcendental loving service in the spiritual planet of the name Goloka Vrindavan. Very good. Resembles, what does Goloka Vrindavan resemble? To, where is it? Which resembles a huge lotus flower, a Maha lotus flower. Thus, by the process of Bhakti Yoga, directly accepted as suggested in this verse, by sufficient hearing of the transcendental message of the Lord, the material contamination is directly eliminated without one's attempting to contemplate the impersonal Virat conception of the Lord. And by practicing Bhakti Yoga, if the performer is not purified from the material contamination, he must be a pseudo-devotee, not a real devotee, a so-called devotee. For such an impostor, there is no remedy for being freed from material entanglement. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled The Lord in the Heart. Translation again. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarine message of the Lord, of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life, known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. So, we can drink through the mouth, or we can, in Krishna consciousness, we can do these things. We can drink through the mouth by tasting nectar that's been offered to the Lord, or even by drinking ordinary water. Ordinary water is not ordinary. Water, pure water, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, by drinking water, we are able to remember the Lord. Krishna says that He is the taste of water. When we are very thirsty on a hot day and we drink water, we become satisfied, isn't it? Yeah. I'm the taste of water. So here the message is very nicely given, how all of the sufferings of the material world, all of the suffering that is being experienced by people in the material world can be mitigated, can be stopped, can be averted by two things that are mentioned here. Prabhupada is focusing on one of those things, specifically by the process of hearing, which was the theme of the previous verse as well. Sravanam, of the 9 processes of devotional service. The first of those 9, Sravanam, is considered to be most important. Sravanam, hearing the nectarine instructions from both Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, as mentioned also in the purport. So Prabhupada is giving a hint here, actually, to one aspect which he has not developed in the purport. In many other places he has developed that theme. And he's giving us a clue here by this particular statement. Quite a few statements, actually. Beginning with this one here. The supply source is complete. Means whatever comes from nature with little effort is sufficient and complete. We don't need all of the modern day fabrications that we have to become comfortable. Rather, they are a cause of exploitation and creating all kinds of unnatural conditions and imbalances, actually, in society. For example, because of our modern day so-called advancement in terms of developed cities and developed a mode of transportation. Everyone wants to be reaching that same level of so-called modern development, but this so-called modern development is creating an imbalance on so many levels. One of the obvious imbalances is that we have exploited the natural resources of nature as never before in the history. There is, it is estimated that over 33%, that means 1/3 of the natural resources contained within the planet, within Mother Earth, have been taken out, have been used, have been misused actually, due to our wanting to live this so-called high standard of living. So Prabhupada is saying here, the supply source is complete. Whatever we need for meeting our basic needs and necessities of life is complete, and only a little energy by the human being is required to get his necessities into the proper channel. But unfortunately, we're not doing that. We are exerting huge amounts of energy to exploit the material nature. And Prabhupada continues here, there is no need of machines and tools or huge steel plants, as we have today, for artificially creating comforts, comforts of life. And the important statement he is making here also is that life is never meant or life is never made comfortable by artificial means, but by plain living and high thinking. So plain living and high thinking are two aspects which we need to understand nicely. In this purport, Srila Prabhupada has especially focused on high thinking. So there's plain living, and then there's high thinking. So the high thinking has been very nicely elaborated here by Srila Prabhupada. This high thinking has to do directly with giving, what Prabhupada refers to here also, giving oral reception or drinking through the ear holes, giving oral reception to the transcendental instructions given both in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and so many other literatures. There's huge amount of literatures yet untouched, unheard. I think it was, recently Indradumna Maharaj was giving some discourses on various pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan. When he was in Vrindavan, he was attending or going to some institute where they have so many different literatures. The Goswamis of Vrindavan have left us, and so many other great Vaishnavas, especially after the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a huge amount of literature, Vaishnava literature, and we know Vaishnava literature especially focuses on the essence which is the science of bhakti or devotional service, and therefore this is what Srila Prabhupada has elaborated in terms of high thinking. So the more we can arrange our lives in such a way that we can hear maximum. So this is the dimension of high thinking. Plain living, which is mentioned here also, plain living and high thinking has to do with maintaining or creating or accepting a more simplified lifestyle that does not require us to engage in so many ways. Actually, they are over endeavors to create huge structures, you see. Therefore, for the vast majority of people, this plain living is directly connected with simple living. Simple living, plain living, is directly connected with the lifestyle that was demonstrated by the Brajavasis, the lifestyle, village lifestyle, actually. Plain living means meeting our necessities of life without all of these industries and machines that are extremely destructive to the planet, not only to the planet Mother Bhumi, but that are also destructive to people, you know. In modern times, we speak of what is called hard technology. Sometimes people, when they hear this kind of purport, they will think that Krishna consciousness is against technology, or Vedic culture is against technology. We're not against technology as such. We are against what is known as hard technology. There are two kinds of technology. There's the demoniac technology, and there is the divine technology. The demoniac technology is also referred to as hard technology. Involves big machines, and just like our whole, air travel. Today people travel by air. Well, previously people used to travel by air also, but by mantra, by development of psychic powers, one can travel by air. Narada Muni traveled by air all the time. These are referred to. And the demigods travel also by air. They make use of different, they have a different system of traveling by, which is not polluting. Like our air travel today is very polluting and destructive in so many different ways. So this technology, when we read actually our Shastra, we hear about very advanced technology. The science of mantra, perfecting sound vibration. The Kshatriyas within the art of the science of warfare, the Battle of Kurukshetra, when we read the descriptions, we hear of the use of mantra also in the Ramayana. Lord Ram was and Lakshman as well. This was a known science by imbibing energy, material energy in arrows through sound vibration. So these are very advanced sciences, very advanced technology, which is unknown today. So this very important point that is being made here at the end of the chapter regarding the importance of understanding this philosophy of plain living and high thinking. And ISKCON as a society actually is meant to demonstrate this in a very practical way by balancing these two aspects of plain living and high thinking. So plain living is very much connected with the whole concept of Varnasrama Dharma as well. When we agree to accept the concept and the principles of Varna and Asrama, then this leads us more easily, more directly, more quickly as well to these two aspects of simple living and high thinking. Varnasrama Dharma is there to actually facilitate these two aspects of simple living and high thinking. And of course, our model is Vrindavan, and how these two aspects were simultaneously present in Vrindavan Dham. People were living a very simple life, simple living, depending on the land, meeting all of their necessities. The residents of Vrindavan were much more opulent than the average Joe Blow today, than the average people. They were, it is nicely described how the residents of Vrindavan, the ladies were wearing silk saris, and the men as well, and they were wearing real jewelry, golden jewelry. And all of their material needs were met simply because they were completely synchronized, harmonized with the natural system that Krishna has given or is giving to humanity, which is, as Prabhupada often would remind us, if people have some land and cows, and if they know, if brahmanas are there to properly guide them and direct them, they can meet all of their necessities of life. Sarva kama dugamahi. That is mentioned also in the Bhagavatam. Sarva kama, all of the material necessities of life can be met easily by having some land. And when we agree to live in this system, when we agree to live in this simplified lifestyle, then we automatically get more time for hearing about and therefore speaking about subject matters of a higher nature, high thinking. So we'll read the verse again here. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarine message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life, known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Comments? Yeah.
As you mentioned, the lifestyle, Maharaj.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, how we live here, as you mentioned, simple living, I think.
Yes.
It's dependent on our service in spiritual life, how we develop our conscious and how we live here.
Yes.
It's much too connected in spiritual world also.
Huh?
It's connected to spiritual world also.
Yes, simple living, how we live, is very much connected with higher consciousness, isn't it? That's why village life is described as a life more in the mode of goodness compared to city life. City life, especially modern day city life, is hellish, because it is deeply influenced by the tamagun and rajagun, mode of ignorance and mode of passion. Whereas village life, when we are properly guided, when we accept to be properly guided by qualified brahmanas, we don't unnecessarily accumulate. We learn to be satisfied with the minimum. We learn to be satisfied with what Krishna and material nature arranges. We don't go out of our way. We don't engage in over-endeavor, you see. We don't become what is being promoted today, so-called smart villages, smart cities, which are unnecessarily highly developed, basically for so-called advanced comforts of life. So there's a direct link, yes, I think this is the point you're making. There's a direct link between our lifestyle and development of higher consciousness. And that's why when we fail to balance these two, that's the point I was trying to make, to bring out actually. Prabhupada makes the statement of plain living and high thinking. He does speak a little bit about plain living, but the main focus of the purport is in terms of high thinking and in terms of hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing from the Bhagavad Gita, purifying our consciousness, and the end result being that we end up going back home, back to Godhead, which is the main focus. And just a little bit, Prabhupada is referring to plain living by mentioning how we don't need all of this machinery, and that this machinery is polluting the atmosphere. This machinery is leading to artificial lifestyle. This machinery is making us forget actually the real goal of life, etc. So lifestyle, yes. The recommended standard lifestyle we should always remember, but we forget always, most of the time, unfortunately, or we don't really understand. And practically speaking, because of the whole modern development based on ever-increasing so-called material comforts of life, we have forgotten, we've disconnected ourselves in a very major way from this more natural, simple village lifestyle. Because to live, sometimes the devotees will say, well, can't we apply this concept of simple living and high thinking in the city? And the idea is that yes, we should endeavor as much as possible to live simply and to develop higher consciousness. That's the meaning of simple living and high thinking. But in that atmosphere and that whole situation, it is extremely difficult. It's practically an over-endeavor because people have to travel to work. The whole modern system is such that you have to travel a long distance. You have to fight it out in the traffic. How you can develop high thinking in this way? You're constantly, majority of our devotees are associating with persons of demoniac mentality, persons who are totally absorbed in sense gratification, people who are in the rat race, isn't it? So our devotees are caught up in that rat race. So, of course, by taking different precautions, we can minimize the damages, but the damages are going to be there because we are living in that situation. So the best thing is to actually understand what Prabhupada actually wanted us to do in the very beginning by going in these cities, that our primary purpose in the cities is to preach. If we're not there preaching, if we're not there actively giving the maximum amount of time for the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the mission of Srila Prabhupada, if we're just living in the cities, working in the cities, not engaged in the front line preaching, then we're going to be defeated, because the forces of Maya are so powerful. So therefore, living in the city is primarily, if we should understand, we've made this point many times, our cities are meant to be our preaching basis. Cities are meant to be the place where we preach. City means preaching basis. Village means living basis. We should be living in the villages. The majority of our devotees should be living in the villages. The majority of people in the world should be living in the country. That's how it was before, since only a few hundred years, you see. And we are in the cities, we should always understand, mainly and primarily for preaching purposes. And if we're not preaching, we should not be in the cities. It's that simple. If we're not engaged in frontline preaching, we should not be in the cities. Yeah, Prabhupada has spoken about this on many occasions as well. And the vast majority of our devotees are struggling every day to maintain their level of consciousness, are struggling every day to chant their 16 rounds. Many of them are not chanting their 16 rounds. You see. And when we stop chanting our 16 rounds, when we stop hearing from the Bhagavatam on a regular daily basis, we are meant to chant every day, we are meant to hear every day. When we stop doing that, obviously we're going to be in trouble. Our mind is going to be disturbed. We're going to be engaged in all kinds of improper activities, etc. Isn't it? So this is not to discourage devotees who are living in the city, but we should understand that we should understand we're not understanding Prabhupada's mission, who wanted us to show by example what is meant to be the ideal way of living, which is not to be caught up in all kinds of modern way of living based on industry and machines, etc., like that, which is in so many places and so many purports, Prabhupada is telling it is sucking out the vital energy of individuals, you see. We're spending so much of our energy just to survive, just to meet the basic necessities of life. Whereas if we simply learn, if we simply accept the instructions of the Bhagavatam, if we simply accept the instructions given by our founder Acharya, to actually live this lifestyle, to accept this lifestyle based on plain living, then easily, automatically, directly, and quickly, this high thinking, higher consciousness, purified consciousness will come. Otherwise, we will be struggling. We will be struggling physically, materially, mentally, emotionally, and we'll be struggling especially. Anyone who struggles physically, mentally, emotionally, will be struggling spiritually, obviously. To properly develop higher consciousness, one must become situated in the mode of goodness. And this lifestyle is the most conducive to facilitate this mode of goodness. But for preaching purposes, yes, devotees go in the cities and accept all kinds of inconveniences. But they are protected, because those who are preachers, and this was emphasized by Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning of the movement, devotees, they would be hearing hours and hours every day. And they would be engaging in Harinam also every day for hours. So they were in the spiritual bubble of Krishna consciousness, protected from the negative influence that is there actually in the cities. And whoever would come to a temple, it was like walking in another world, walking in the spiritual world actually. Temples are meant to emulate the spiritual world. They are the spiritual world actually. Yeah.
It's 2 minutes you can
Yeah.
explain on that. Our service, as you mentioned, was we are develop this kind of way of life. It's connected in spiritual life also. If you go to Golokanda, because we are not practicing here living with cows and land.
Yes. When we practice this lifestyle, which is directly connecting us with land, directly connecting us with cows, then Krishna's created that system. Krishna has himself demonstrated by his personal example as a cowherd boy, isn't it? He's showing us, he's telling us, teaching us, and he's showing us directly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead looking after cows. You know, we think that this is not such a high service. You know, how many of our devotees are cowherds? Or even think about becoming cowherds, you know. Even in our different communities where we have cows, not so many devotees are, you know, so much involved with cows. Or not so many devotees are involved with the land. But actually the vast majority of people are meant to be involved with cows. And cows is not only for people who are farmers. There's also a misunderstanding. Brahmanas keep cows, Kshatriyas keep cows. You know, Brahmanas milk the cows. They know how to milk cows, you know. That's not their main, that's not their only service or their main service, but they do that because that's part of their lifestyle. We become so far away from that lifestyle that we've forgotten even basics. Everyone in the Vedic culture, within a Varnasrama system, is interacting with cows all the time. And that's an important aspect because cows being in the mode of goodness, when we interact, when we associate, it's a question of association. When we associate with cows, we develop the mode of goodness, even we're not even aware of it. It's like when we interact or associate with sadhus, then we get the benefit of the qualities of a sadhu. When we associate with cows, we get the benefit of the qualities of the cow. Cows in the mode of goodness, isn't it? The whole Vedic culture, by living in villages with this understanding, which is only possible by hearing, by purified consciousness, hearing, properly hearing, attentive hearing, will purify the consciousness and help us to actually apply what we are hearing. We're not only hearing in the Bhagavatam about high thinking, we're also hearing about plain living, like in this purport. So what does it mean? Unless we apply this plain living, that means we're not hearing. We're not hearing properly. Isn't it? Yeah. So we can close here for now. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Sri Prabhupada ki. Gaura Premanandi. Yeah, some people will say